There are other dimensions of empire that we should be concerned about. Political unilateralism is a dimension of empire that we should also be concerned about. Wanting to act alone, according to one's own whims and fancies, not caring for the rest of the world. Very little regard for the Committee of Nations, whether it is the Kyoto Accord or the International Criminal Court, otherwise known as the Rome Statute, or issues which go back to a couple of decades ago, Antarctica, the law of the seas. This desire, this determination to act alone. And you see it in other areas. The militarization of outer space, though this has earned the ire of a number of European countries, allies of the United States of America, Washington has decided to go ahead with this very expensive project, the militarization of outer space. And the Iraq War, in spite of all the opposition, decided to go ahead. This is political unilateralism at its worst. And of course, political unilateralism also means that you manipulate international institutions when it suits your convenience. The UN, President Bush pronounced on the eve of the war was irrelevant. Now it's relevant because he wants the UN to help the United States. There are other aspects of empire which should concern us. The economic dimensions we have alluded to, but look at its human costs. What does this sort of imperialism, this sort of capitalism driven by deregulation and privatization, what does it mean to human beings? This is what we should ask. Isn't it amazing that with the growth of this type of capitalism, the gap between the have-a-lot and the have-a-little has widened considerably? We're not talking of the old dichotomy between the haves and the have-nots. We're talking about a new dichotomy between the have-a-lot and the have-a-little of this world. In 1960, the gap between the top 20% and the bottom 20% on a global scale was 30 times. By the year 2000, according to UN figures, it had increased to more than 90 times. And this is connected with the type of capitalism that is being pursued. Isn't it a shame, friends, that one human being, one of the richest persons on earth, his total annual income is more than that of the whole of Africa? Isn't it a pity that three of the richest persons on earth, and they're all men, their total earnings exceed that of 48 of the poorest nations on earth? The other day at one of the UN meetings, it was disclosed that the European Union spends more on a cow per annum than what most of the citizens of sub-Saharan Africa earn in a year. These are just statistics for us, but for those who are at the receiving end, you can imagine what these statistics mean. The suffering, the indignity, the marginalization caused by this economic system, which had promised to lift all the boats, which is what globalization is supposed to mean, except that we know that a lot of the boats are sinking. And some are rising very, very fast above the waves. Because I suppose this is in line with that old dictum of that old colonial empire, Britannia rules the waves. I suppose now Pax Americana rules the waves. This is the end result of the type of globalization that we are witnessing. There are yet other aspects that we should look at. The cultural dimension. It is true that empire and this drive towards globalization have not been able to obliterate the cultural variety, which is humankind's heritage. It's true that variety is there, the diversity is still there. But there is a challenge, and the challenge comes from the homogenizing dimension of a global culture, and that global culture is essentially American. It is powerful. It's able to penetrate the sanctum sanctorum, the innermost areas of almost every other culture and civilization. It transforms values, attitudes, relationships within the family, in the community. It promotes a type of individualism, a crass, gross form of individualism, which negates communitarian values, which undermines the sense of sharing, of caring, that have been part of human civilization for such a long while. Friends, does this mean that there is no saving grace in this empire, in the globalization that we are witnessing, which is part of the economic ideology of this empire? It would be wrong to say that there is no saving grace, because empires have also generated some good. This is the historical evidence. The Roman Empire was responsible for developing a set of laws which lasted centuries. It developed an infrastructure, a highway system, which was the marvel of the world. And the American Empire has also got some tremendous achievements in the area of information and communication technology, for instance. And even if you look at growth, growth has, without any doubt at all, contributed towards the alleviation of poverty in certain circumstances, because it does have that sort of impact in certain circumstances. There are countries that have benefited from the expansion of trade driven by empire. These benefits we have to acknowledge. And within the empire itself, you cannot deny that there is some space for dissent. There are diverse views that are expressed within the empire. And the American empire has perhaps the distinction of being the most ethnically and culturally diverse empire in history. Almost every community under the sun is here in the United States of America. This tremendous religious diversity and ethnic diversity. The schisms which exist within religions in other parts of the world, those schisms have found a common home in this country. These are the great strengths of the United States of America. But these are strengths that would exist even if the United States was not an empire. And that, I think, is what is important. That the great assets, the great virtues of this civilization would be able to sustain themselves, perpetuate themselves, even if the United States of America did not exercise the military power that it does. Because military power has nothing to do with these great, stupendous accomplishments of this particular civilization.